Good evening and welcome to the March 9th, 2023 meeting of the Abington Township Board of Commissioners. May I have a roll call, please?
Commissioners Brodsky,
I'm here.
Rothman,
Here.
DePlacido,
Here.
Vaughn, Thompson,
Here.
Weingrab,
Here.
Henry,
Here.
Capone,
Here.
Carswell,
Here.
Spiegelman,
Here.
Bowl, Schreiber,
Here.
Bowman,
Here.
Vice President Vehy,
Here.
President Hecker.
Here. May we please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Before moving to public comment on agenda items, I want to point out that for new business item D, this is the briefing regarding 100 York Road and 101 Washington Lane and considering proposed ordinance amendments. We are going to take public comment on that agenda item after the briefing is given during the course of the meeting. So if you're here to speak on that matter, you'll have the opportunity to hear the briefing before you stand up to offer any comments. And with that, I will now take public comment on other items on the agenda. Please come forward, sir. Good evening.
Just wanted to, I noticed on the agenda there are a number of items that are either bidding or rebidding contracts. Some of them are procurement, some of them are services. Just wanted to remind the board that we do have a new responsible contracting ordinance, and that I anticipate that all the provisions of that will be observed in the bidding and rebidding of those contracts.
I was Mr. Manfredi?
That's correct.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
thank you. Other comments on agenda items?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Joe Rooney. I live in Ardsley. It's incredible to see everybody here. Welcome back to board meetings. It's pretty amazing. In the unfinished business at the last meeting, you guys voted on a $10,000 to $20,000 settlement to be determined, excuse me, to be determined for a employee who was making public pornography. And we were told that when the settlement was finalized, that the township would be advised of what that is. So I was just questioning about that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions about agenda items? If not, I'll move to Zoom.
Ross, you're unmuted.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, thank you.
Hi, Ross Abel. I'm an Abington resident. First off, I want to say I'm super excited to see that the Jenkintown Abington Connections Plan that Commissioner Weingrad has been working on. I'm excited to see that that's going to be targeting construction this year. So thank you, Commissioner Weingrad, for that. That is awesome. For the bike plan application tonight for the grant, I just wanted to ask that during the design phase, if we can consult with DVRPC or the Bike Coalition of Greater Philadelphia to ensure we're targeting a modern standard for our bike plan, that would be fantastic. Sharrows, which are essentially painted symbols on pavement, are generally not considered a successful approach to bike infrastructure, and the gold standard is really solid painted lanes with physical separation from car lanes. The township could get creative with what methods to provide physical separation. Other communities are using concrete curbs, flexi-posts, rows of parking, even art, planters. There are a lot of options, and it can be cost-effective to provide this extra level of safety for our residents. Pursuing protection like this has shown that twice as many people are willing to get out and bike, and injuries from cars are reduced by up to 90%. That means our roads will be safer for kids and the elderly to be independent, and low-income residents who overwhelmingly rely on all alternative forms of transportation. So while I'm eager to see that we're investing in our bike infrastructure, I would love for us to do it intelligently and ultimately to pursue, whether through this plan or in the future, infrastructure that targets safety first and foremost, whether residents are on bike, foot, or anything else. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Manager Manfredi, when would the design phase actually begin if this moves forward?
When this gets approved, it'll be submitted. It'll
Yeah.
go through PennDOT for review, and then they may require redesign simply because these standards are old when the plan was adopted.
Right.
There may be an opportunity at that time to do what Mr. Abel's suggesting.
Okay.
One of the reasons we're doing this, as you recall, last year, we appropriated $45,000 for the Bader area.
Yep.
By going after this grant, if we're successful, we'll be able to do 3 times as much work, or perhaps redesign and put in some of the improvements he's suggesting.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we can go to the next resident.
Laura Lehman, you're unmuted.
Hi, Laura Lehman, 1431 Bryant Lane in Meadowbrook. And I wanted to say tonight, so first of all, I am glad that you put the 100 York later. I hope you won't forget our open 3 minutes and also their 5 minutes that they're supposed to have as a new item. And I don't know, but I think some of these other things are new items too and should have gone into a working session. Are we eliminating any sort of a committee meeting totally at this point? Because when you eliminate, for instance, the vacant property meetings, that means that we don't have any say and you do months and months of work without any input from the public. And that's not appropriate. So Lance Weatherly is being appointed to the Planning Commission. I'm interested in, when I'm finished speaking, if you would please answer whether or not he will be trained for the Planning Commission. We seem to have people on the Zoning Board and the Planning Commission and so on that don't seem to know what the laws and codes are that we are enforcing. And so it makes a difference. We're putting people on that board as leaders. They should be trained and properly able to lead. And that is not always happening, okay? And you know, because I've let you know when that doesn't happen. And the other item is, I'd like to know who the code officials are, by the way, speaking of officials. Do we have new code officials, or is Kim Ham still Director of Code?
Okay, we will answer that question this evening and when we get to the agenda item D under new business.
Okay, I didn't see that on the new business. Is it on there? Did you put that on there?
No, it's part of the briefing.
Okay, so, all right, so, and again, you know, I'd like to be able to find these things on the website. Speaking of which, I just had somebody call me, so I missed the first speaker, because they couldn't find the Zoom link. We've asked you endlessly, please, to highlight the Zoom link and not put it buried in the middle of a big paragraph. Why can't you do that one ridiculous thing? I can't tell you how many times in the middle of a meeting I've been helping people online because you also won't put up a helpline, a number where people can call if they're having technical difficulty or need a response. So I actually would like to see that happen. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Can we move on to the next resident?
Karen, you're unmuted. Karen, you have to unmute yourself. Remington Darren, you're unmuted.
Hi there. My name is Remington Darren. I live on Highland Avenue. I'm voicing support for the chasing after the grant for the bike lanes. It's great that you guys are doing that. I really appreciate you guys are actually trying to implement bike infrastructure. I just really want you guys to look at redesigning it intelligently. Like Ross was saying, we need to work with the Bike Coalition or the DVRC and make them intelligently, they should be protected and allow kids and elderly to be able to use the roads because Sharrows, Sharrows, we already share the road. Bikers of Abington already share the road, and it's kind of hell. So if you guys want people to actually bike and to, not be afraid of traffic, you got to put the protected bike lanes in. Sharrows don't do really anything. Share the road signs, people ignore that. So if you want, people to actually bike, you got to protect them. That's all I got to say. I do appreciate you guys supporting bikers, and doing this. Just please do it intelligently and actually support us. Thank you.
Thank you. And as mentioned earlier, there will be opportunities during the design phase to take a look at all of that, and we definitely will.
Karen?
Yes. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, awesome. I'm a Hollywood resident. I own a home. And I think this idea is ludicrous. First of all, I have two friends that are bikers. One is an Olympic biker, and he was gravely injured on the road. The other is a dear friend of mine who was chief of urology at CHOP. He was killed on a bicycle on the road as well. So I do believe there should be a traffic study for this. You're going to need defibrillators present. You're going to need emergency lines present in case someone doesn't have a cell phone. And I believe every property owner that this affects, where you're going to have bikers by your house and you're going to be liable if they fall in your driveway, we need to know. I think we have a right to know. These trails have to be well lit. Some of the roads you're proposing are a nightmare to begin with. Cedar Road is awful. There's schools, there's churches, there's synagogues, there's a new development coming up. The lighting is poor. And what are the laws here? Is it a 24-hour bike lane? So are we going to need lights everywhere? So people whose houses are there, their lighting's going to change. It's going to be in their eyes. And it's going to be a legal nightmare for Abington. I have friends that are litigation lawyers for personal injury, and you're going to be responsible for every pothole for everyone that falls. This does not serve most of the community. At least 50% of the community will not use this, and this will be an imposition, especially because we're putting in so many elderly centers, one of which is going to go over at the old Catholic school site. So we have two kinds of drivers in Abington at present, young and aggressive, where laws don't matter. And we have older, feeble drivers with poor eyesight and poor reflexes. And adding a bike lane is a disaster that Abington, I hope you're going to pump up your litigation areas. And what are we going to do for crime? People are getting carjacked, and they're going to get hiked. They're going to get robbed on their bike. That's actually a better target for robbers. So we have very little police officers. We don't have a lot of fire rescue. As a matter of fact, they just downsized and amalgamated some of the fire rescue teams. So please tell me medically how we're going to have good lighting, how we're going to be responsible. Are us as homeowners going to be responsible when people fall in our driveways? So there's a lot of legalities here, and I do hope you have a traffic study because this is impacting the roads. Thank you for listening. I think it's a bad idea.
Thank you.
Scott Shepard, you're unmuted.
Hi, I'm Scott Shepard. I live in Roslyn, and I just wanted to know, how would the road changes affect bus routes for schools and such? That's all. Manager
Manfredi, I think the question relates to with the
Bike
bike
lanes?
lanes and what impact that would have on bus routes. And
I don't believe
any.
I don't believe any.
Yeah.
Kizzy Wooten, you're unmuted.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, I would like to acknowledge and thank the township officials, Commissioner Weingrad, fire and police township officials, and the residents of 100 York Properties for attending this meeting and allowing it and for hearing us out, as well as making haste with all of our concerns and issues we're having here. And I really wish the owner of the property cared enough to do the same. And, hopefully he will step up to the plate and acknowledge and rectify and make change soon with haste. And it's hard to imagine all of this unless you were in my shoes. And some, like most, don't understand or become empathetic until it hits home. So this is just a really serious situation. I'm a single mom, a parent of a high school student. He has 2 more years left in school. I don't want to just uproot him and move. And we all know the cost of living since COVID has skyrocketed. So it's just a situation that I'm kind of stuck in, and I just want to say I appreciate everyone, and all of the concerns have been addressed numerous times. So I'm not going to repeat all of those concerns, but I just wanted to acknowledge and thank everyone who is helping along with this process to help us here at 100 York. Thank you.
Thank you.
James Stevens, you're unmuted.
Hi, thank you. This is James Stevens on Upland Avenue. I just want to thank the commissioners, Commissioner Weingrad, for your support. I want to voice my support for items E and F on the agenda related to the implementation. I agree with the prior speakers that having separated bike lanes will make for a safer environment for biking than the current kind of bike lanes on Valley Road that are not separated. I think, kind of Sharrows isn't like the greatest thing, but it's a start. And so separated bike lanes probably make the most sense on Bader Road. I would hope that some of the costs or improvements that are contemplated in this resolution or in this grant, should we be so fortunate to be awarded it, would take into account the Noble Station Bridge project so that there's not kind of a duplicative effort. Maybe there's some way that we can leverage that project for better improvements that would get folks from Bader to the Fairway and over to my neighborhood where the bike routes go. On item F, I'm glad that we're extending that support. I know that project is an important project, provides multi-use paths that are really important, making that connection to other parts of the township. So hopefully that project will get going. I know we're extending it, but I don't know if we're in danger of losing those funds. But I hope we're not, and we can get it done within the anticipated time frame. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments. Grace, I believe that was the final one? Okay, thank you. With that, we will move to the consent agenda, and for that, I will turn to Board Vice President Matt Vahey.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for passage of the consent agenda listed on the agenda as items A through D, and I so move.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The consent agenda carries. We have no unfinished business this evening, and so we will move right into new business. And for that, I will once again turn to Board Vice President Matt Vahey.
Thank you, Mr. President. First item of new business is BOC-04-030923, motion to reject all mowing contract bids and rebid, and I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Are there any comments or questions from members of the board? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries.
Next item of new business is BOC-05-030923, is a motion to award the following annual public works material bids and authorize the township manager to execute all contracts for the following bids. The 2023 Super Pave Materials bid bid award to Glasgow Inc. in the amount of $1,281,275. The 2023 ready-mix concrete bid award to JDM Materials Company in the amount of $23,525. And finally, the 2023 engineered retaining wall system material bid award to Eureka Stone Quarry in the amount of $40,000. And I so move.
It has been moved and seconded. Are there any comments or questions from members of the board? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries.
Next item of new business is BOC-06030923, a motion to award the Abington Township Sign Shop printer bid to Grimco Inc. in the amount of $27,960 and authorize the township manager to execute the contract. And I so move.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Are there any comments or questions from members of the board? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries.
Next item is BOC-07030923. This is the briefing regarding 100 York Road and 101 Washington Lane. Afterwards, we'll consider proposed ordinance amendments.
Thank you. We'll, for this matter, return to Township Manager, Mr. Manfredi.
Thank you, President Hecker and members of the board. It is good to see you. Before we begin the briefing, I think it's important to note that on March 1, after the long service of a distinguished fire marshal, John Rohr, there was a vacancy to be filled. I want to introduce to you today, for those who have not met him or do not know him, Mr. Chris Platts. Chris is, I'm going to let Mr. McEnany speak to Mr. Platts' background. You're going to hear firsthand why he's been selected to be the fire marshal. And also, it's been a long time coming that the Code Enforcement Division will also be shifted to where we had hoped it would be, which is underneath the fire, underneath the fire marshal. But I have to say with that, I want to thank Kim Ham, director, for the time that she put in to take on that responsibility of assisting and managing the Code Enforcement Division while we waited for this opportunity to move in this direction. So I want to thank her for the time that she's committed to that role. And with that, I simply turn to Mr. McEnany to talk a little bit about why Chris Platts is the right person for this position, and then we'll get into a briefing on what has happened from the last meeting until this meeting with the activities at 100 York and 101. Mr. McEnany will talk a little bit about the changes to the International Property Maintenance Code and why we're making those. And of course, Solicitor Clark will fill in any blanks, any legal questions as it relates to that ordinance, and then of course take any comments of the Board of Commissioners. So with that, Mr. McEnany, if you would.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rich. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. Thank you for having us here tonight. It's good to be back in person. Chris Platts has been with the township full-time. He started as a fire inspector in 2019, but that's not where his service with the township began. He started as a junior firefighter with the Abington Fire Company when he was 16, about 15 years ago, 14, 15 years ago. So he has been serving this township for well over a decade. Chris is a graduate of the University of New Haven's Fire Science program. He's a certified fire and explosion investigator and has a stack of certificates probably this thick in all of his qualifications. When John, retirement of John Rohr, he has giant shoes to fill. John has been with the Abington Township Fire Department at Edge Hill Fire Company for over 40 years. I run with Edge Hill, and that's where I learned to be a firefighter under John. And so he kind of helped Chris and I kind of move up through the ranks over the years. So there's big shoes to fill, but that said, he also trained Chris to fill those shoes. And Chris has my every confidence. He is conscientious, knowledgeable, and I think he will do nothing but impress everybody going forward. And I think it's great that we have him in this position. So,
Thank you, Tom. Chris, welcome into the new role. We look forward to working with you and supporting your important work on behalf of the residents of the township. So congratulations.
thank you. All right. You want to grab us? Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. So tonight, Chris is going to talk more directly about the issues at 100 York, 101 Elm. I'm going to talk about the update from the 1993 Boca Code to the proposed, what's before you, to the International Property Maintenance Code, the 2021 edition. You know, the issues that went on, that have been going on down at that property, you know, this proposed new code is a township-wide code. It's not specifically directed at any property. It's not because of any property. But in looking at the issues, it opened our eyes to some gaps and some vagaries in the 1993 code that, you know, we were looking for ways to improve it. And, you know, that was certainly an impetus for us to look at things that we can improve. So my discussion tonight will be twofold. The first part will be an explanation of the improvements of the IPMC, the International Property Maintenance Code, over the 1993 Boca Code, as well as some quick comparisons for context as to why the new code is going to be a bit more comprehensive. And then the second part will be, I'll discuss some of the Abington-specific amendments that we will be proposing that you adopt. Some of them are direct carryovers from the previous Boca Code that the Board of Commissioners in 1993 adopted, and some of them are brand new. So getting into the actual differences, the substantive goals of both codes are the same. They're to ensure that people maintain their properties across the township, but as we know, the devil's in the details. The very first thing that jumps out is the obvious. The 1993 Boca Code is almost 30 years old. It's from 1993. The very first thing is it's out of circulation. It's almost impossible for a resident to get a copy of unless you want to go on eBay and find an old photocopy, something like that. The current code, the IPMC, is available on the International Code Council website free of charge to anybody. So it's more readily accessible and easy to find for people to look up and address their own concerns. Additionally, the 1993 code, it uses a lot of outdated language, whereas the 2021 code uses the more modern language and terminology that is being used across all of the other building codes, you know, the building, the plumbing code, things like that, so that it's an apples-to-apples comparison. So you're not trying to crosswalk a term that was used 30 years ago to what may be used right now. One of the big things is the 2021 IPMC is much more specific and detailed. The 93 Boca Code could be vague in its language, and it left a lot of subjective discretion up to the individual code inspector. The IPMC gives more details and context as to what the intentions of that specific section are, and it allows for a more standardized approach for enforcement. A quick example, in the 1993 Boca Code, the language with regard to what constitutes an unsafe structure is one paragraph long with a lot of, you know, in the opinion of, likely, things like very subjective language, whereas the 2021 IPMC gives a detailed list of 11 separate bullet points that defines what a dangerous structure is. So it gives more guidance to the inspector, it gives more guidance to the property owner, so that, you know, we're not, you know, theoretically in court battling over subjective language in a code. The 2021 code, IPMC, contains additional improvements that the 1993 code, like I said, would be subjective or would fall under a generalized or catch-all violation, whereas the IPMC adds 28 years worth or 30 years worth of additional knowledge and best practices. Another example, in the IPMC, section 304.1.1 defines unsafe conditions for the exterior of a structure with 13 separate bullet points. There is no equivalent in the Boca Code. It's just kind of a catch-all. It's the same thing for dangerous conditions on the interior of a structure. It gives 6 separate bullet points on that, where there is no equivalent in the Boca Code. And then there's some additional things that are in the new code that weren't addressed at all. In the 1993 Boca Code, there was no specific language for the upkeep and maintenance of swimming pools with regards to controlling insects and things like that. You know, every once in a while we come across issues where a pool is unkept and it becomes an issue for mosquitoes and things like that. This is specifically addressed in the modernized code. And the other great thing is going forward, the enacting ordinance, or the proposed enacting ordinance, states to upgrade to the latest version of the IPMC as it becomes published. So rather than us coming back before you every 3 years to...
It's built in.
Yeah, so, or coming back 30 years later and changing it up.
Exactly.
So, and then with regards to the specific amendments proposed for you for the 2021 IPMC, there's 13 proposed amendments that are attached to the ordinance. The majority, like I said, are direct carryovers, or they're fill in the blanks for, insert the township's name here or there. But some of the ones that have some substance to them, I'll go through them. I think there's 5. So the proposed amendment to the 2021 that we would be recommending is to change the minimum heat from to be a minimum of 65 degrees in a rental unit. The previous Boca Code was 60. In the 1993 code and the unamended 2021 code, section 606.2 requires buildings equipped with multiple elevators to have at least one of them working at all times. One of the issues that we've kind of learned from some of these properties is, a large capacity building, one elevator is just not enough. So one of the recommendations that we would make is for Abington, the proposed amendment would be buildings with multiple elevators, at least half have to be in working condition. And I think that would be a very big step forward. And then the last 3 are actually complete additions or proposed additions. They didn't exist in the Boca Code. They didn't exist in the IPMC. Section 704.8 is new and will require the addition of portable fire extinguishers to rental units. This was not previously in either of the codes. It was previously required by the state in the Fire and Panic Act, but certain provisions of that act were repealed and not replaced, so this would kind of take that place. There would be a phase-in for large multifamily buildings. Section 704.9 will require smoke alarms in all rental units. That's not contemplated in either of the codes. And it would, actually, the IPMC would only require it in new buildings. Our amendment would require it in all rental units regardless of when the building was built. And then 705.1.1 is the same thing for CO alarms. CO alarms or carbon monoxide alarms will be required in all rental units regardless of when the structure was built. That said, that's the conclusion of my portion of the presentation. One thing I did want to kind of put out there is if any residents have, a complaint for property maintenance, the best way to do it is through the citizen service portal on the website. It allows us to track it centrally. It allows them to see the progress that's being made. And it allows, us, help us to help you, I guess, so to speak. And with that said, I can take any questions, or I can turn it over to Mr. Platts, whatever your pleasure.
Well, we'll just see. Mr. Manfredi, before we turn it over for questions.
One thing I want to make clear, there seemed to be some question, Mr. President, members of the board, as to why this is being considered as part of the regular business meeting this evening instead of the working session. And the reason we schedule this with board leadership's support for this regular business meeting is because it was so important to move these matters forward sooner than later, rather than to lose 30 days going through the process. In order to assist in this particular case, Mr. Weingrad and the residents of 100 York with these improvements such as the elevator sooner. By the board considering it this evening, that saves 30 days. You can, if you vote to authorize this evening, you could vote to enact
Next month.
instead of waiting 2 months.
Yep, exactly.
So
Thank you.
I apologize in being remiss in mentioning that earlier.
No, appreciate that. Thank you. Commissioner Schreiber, and then we'll go to Commissioner Zappone.
Yeah, this is a quick question. So in the amendments that you were just mentioning, the fire extinguishers, et cetera, is there, I don't know how to word this, but like, they time out, like they don't last forever, and so would there be an inspection along with that, or?
So that's one of the things that we would probably have to address in other ordinances going forward. Yes, the typical fire extinguisher, if it's a quote-unquote disposable one, they're supposed to be disposed of, I think, 10 years. And then if it's a reusable one, they get inspected annually. And that said, one of the things we don't have the power to do is enter a dwelling, a rental dwelling, anything like that in order to enact an inspection. So a lot of that would have to be somewhat complaint-driven by the actual resident asking us to come out and make that inspection. And then, honestly, that resident would have to be available to, if it went to a citation in court, to be available as a witness in court. But it's like I said, it's a step in the right direction.
And if the place wasn't occupied, like upon first person going into a new rental, could it be inspected at that time?
We currently don't have that available as a rental inspection program.
Commissioner Zappone?
Tom, how many total elevators are in that building?
There's 4.
4. And
Yes.
are they, state law requires they're inspected and certified every year. Is that being done there?
So that's done by the state L&I. They were most recently out there January 26th. That said, it was a span, they weren't there every year. There was a span where they weren't. And, you know, we've been trying to work closely with them to push them forward on that. But again, it's the state's the state and we're us, so there's only so much we can do as far as that.
Now, the ones that are out of service, or who's the company that's taking care of them?
It's changed hands a couple times.
Okay, so were they called in to repair these disabled ones?
Yes, this is a bit of a saga. The building has 4 elevators. One's been completely refurbished. One stayed in operation off and on throughout all of these issues, and the other 2 have not been really addressed. The older one that had been in operation actually is down right now because of an issue that occurred last night there. But that said, we notified maintenance as soon as that occurred for them to make repairs or get their elevator company out there to repair.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Bowman, then Spiegelman, then DiPlacido.
Tom, has the state of Pennsylvania adopted the new code?
The property maintenance code, it's my understanding that the state does not take a stance on property maintenance codes. They deal with building codes, plumbing codes, things like that, but they don't take a stance on property maintenance. They leave that to the individual municipality.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Spiegelman.
Thank you, President Hecker. Tom, this is a follow-up to Commissioner Schreiber's question. If I know you said that we don't have a mechanism for being able to go in and inspect unoccupied apartments or in between tenants. If a tenant moves in and invites you in for an inspection, is that
Yes,
that kosher? Okay.
Yep.
That's good to know. Thank you.
Commissioner DiPlacido.
Thank you, Commissioner Hecker. Commissioner Bowman actually asked the question I was going to ask, but perhaps a two-parter. will these ordinances remain enforceable, meaning that can they be challenged? There's been opportunities when new ownership comes in and new development comes in, and they use that ordinance, but then they bounce it off of something that's more national, and then we have to fight it, and then it turns out that we don't have a fight because the national takes precedence. So do we have good standing with these ordinances right now? Solicitor?
Yes, we do. These codes are adopted and generally accepted. I'm not really familiar with anyone questioning the codes as written. Most of the challenges normally come for the code as it is being applied. That's normally where you see the challenges, but the adoption of this code and using this code as a baseline, we're on solid legal ground with adopting this.
Thank you. Commissioner Thompson.
Thanks, President Hecker. I just want to applaud both of you for pulling this forward. IPMC is a good code. It's part of the suite of codes that's written by the International Code Council. They are the gold standard of codes. This one is not part of the Uniform Construction Code, but their other codes do make up the Uniform Construction Code. And they are correct. It is on us to adopt it. It is adopted by many other municipalities out there, and I really have no concern, and I will support this moving forward.
Thank you. Commissioner Vaughn, and then Commissioner Weingrad.
My question is more so on not necessarily the code, but if we choose to adopt this code and this building in particular, residents has historically had issues, what recourse do we have if they continue to not follow through or their residents are continuing? When they were the previous owners, well, the same owner but different name, whatever the case, they were having similar issues, and now they've just changed the name and increased the rent, but they're still having issues, if not even more issues than they were before. What recourse as a township do we have to assist the residents in these? Because some of these things we can't do anything about as commissioners, right? But what can we do to help advise our residents, even if they're not, in Ward 5, but what can we do as a board if this entity continues to just treat their residents terribly and not uphold the values that we have for Abington Township?
Sure. My best answer for that would be it's a combination of enforcement of the code that we can enforce, as well as perhaps an education component for those residents of the other mechanisms out there for them to pursue for the things that we cannot enforce, such as the landlord-tenant type of issues. That would be my thought is, the enforcement with the education, because, the code is the code. There is only so much that we can do. We have to stay within the kind of the four corners of that. But that said, maybe we could give some education on the other mechanisms that they could pursue on their own, that the township wouldn't be proper to be the ones leading that, but kind of pointing them in the right direction, so to speak.
Commissioner Weingrad.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. McEnany. I've read this International Property Maintenance Code of 2021. I think it's more expansive. I think it's better language than the language that we have now, and I fully support trying to pass this. I think what we would ask to do is advertise it, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And then for a vote on the ordinance next month.
If there's a motion this evening, it would be to advertise the ordinance for adoption at the next month's meeting.
And I think that the amendments that we were discussing, I think, would go a long way to help the residents of the township, and specifically some of the 100 York people with the elevators. So I would urge my colleagues to support this so that we can move forward. I do appreciate that we're doing this really without delay, appreciate that it's the one time that we're not going to go in a working session, although this conversation's great. This is the one time that we need to really expedite things. And so, again, I would urge my colleagues that we move forward with this.
Thank you, Commissioner Weingarten. Commissioner Bowman, you have and then
Yeah,
Commissioner
Tom,
Bowman.
returning to the state via the Boca Code, which the state has adopted, we were told that by someone's rule, only one of the elevators had to be working. Is that the state Boca Code?
So again, the state, and it's my understanding, I'm not going to claim to be an expert on what the state does and doesn't, Yes, the Boca Code and even the current IPMC, the 2021, in that section states only to have one elevator. That's one of the proposed amendments that we're proposing that you adopt, is to change it from one to half.
Well, that leads me to a question, because in another matter that I'm not going to go into the detail about, we learned that the state's code is both the ceiling and the floor, and the townships may not go above it and certainly not below it.
I will have to defer to the solicitor on that as well.
Yeah, we're on solid legal ground by putting in a section that requires, with properties having multiple elevators, that at least 50% of them must be operating at any one time. There's no restriction in the International Property Maintenance Code or the Boca Code which would prevent us from doing that.
Okay. Because I know they do intersect sometimes, it seems like.
They do, and I think the issue that we were talking about a few years ago was the issue of trying to enforce certain things that were specifically not permitted in the code. Here, it's silent on it. Here, we're allowed to make our own local regulations.
Thank you, Mr. Solicitor.
Commissioner Sapone?
Just to follow up to that, in our position, the township's position, can we mandate to the owner of the property to get those elevators repaired, inspected, and put back in service? Are we in a position, maybe Mike, that we can do that? Because if you're saying there's only one elevator now in service, did I hear that right?
That's correct.
And how many people are in that building? That's a safety hazard, I can tell you that right now. So are we in a position to mandate to them, you know, we're putting a time frame on this, we want it repaired, inspected, and put back in service? God forbid it, suppose that one elevator goes out of service. These poor people in there, I mean, can we do that, Mike? I mean.
So it's kind of a strange intersection of our jurisdiction and what we can do and what we can't do. The licensing and the inspection of the elevators are within the jurisdiction of labor and industry. What we're doing tonight is we're saying that as part of our code, if you have one elevator, it must be operating at all times other than routine maintenance or something along those lines. If you have two elevators, one has to be working at every time. If you have four, two have to be working at every time. So while we don't necessarily have the jurisdiction to mandate how they repair them, whether we can inspect them, we are permitted to say that if you have an elevator, you have to have 50% of them working at the same time. So we're going as far as we can go. The rest of it is up to the state L&I.
Commissioner Henry?
And then we cite them?
We cite them.
And then they are cited, and then they're fined, and then what happens? What goes beyond that?
So it's a sort of a multiple step process. There's a notice of violation that is issued. There is a cure period in that notice of violation. If they fail to cure, then we file a citation, then we go to the district justice, and depending on what happens at the district justice hearing, they are fined, and then they have to pay the fine. We have an open issue at this property right now. Just checking my notes, I asked one of my attorneys to check it this morning. We have 37 active dockets in front of the district justice right now for violations at this property. Mr. McEnany has been having his team cite the property owner and issue citations for violations. And we have 37 active dockets at the district justice at this moment. Now, we don't have a court date set yet. We don't know when the court date will be set, but these are the steps that we're taking.
So if we do put this into effect in 30 days, and then at that point, that becomes our code, and at that time, we can begin to enforce that code at that time? Is there a grace period that's put into?
No.
It's just, this is what our expectations are, and let's do it now, right?
I think I'm just checking. The ordinance has a 5-day enactment period. So if we adopt this in April, 5 days after you adopt it, this becomes the code of Abington Township, and we can begin enforcing it on the 6th day.
Thank you, Solicitor.
Commissioner Vaughn.
I understand that we're saying 50% have to be operable, so if there's 4, then 2 have to be operable at all times, but we're not stating that, just because I want to be clear, there's a lot of people in this building. Is 2 functionally reasonable? Can we change that to be, are we allowed legally to change that so that it is in proportion to the amount of people that live in the building?
Well, I think one of the things we're trying to do with this is first of all, to deal with residential properties, but to deal with all properties that have elevators. So linking it necessarily to the number of residents would make it, it wouldn't have the same impact on commercial buildings or things along those lines. So I think that's why the decision was made in discussion with Mr. Manfredi and Mr. McEnany to make it 50% of the elevators that are in the building. And I think it might exclude like freight elevators or things along those lines, but yeah.
Commissioner Bowman.
Not to be lawyerly, but in terms of timetables and all, anything that happens in front of the DJ, even if he went our way on all 37 or some number of complaints, is all appealable to Common Police Court too. And this owner has shown an inclination to do just that. So all of us should be, prepared for whatever comes, including the residents, unfortunately, because the DJ is not necessarily the last stop. Anything that happens in DJ court can go to Common Police Court by appeal.
Thank you. Commissioner Weingrad.
Thank you. You mentioned a number of violations, and I want to thank Township staff, you, Mr. McEnany, you, Mr. Platts, for the diligence that staff is going out, that every complaint, somebody is going out, we're following up, and I guess the best word is just be diligent. There's a process that has to be followed, and I would urge staff to continue to follow that process to help these people. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McEnany, you mentioned that Mr. Platts was going to...
Yes, sir. At this point, Mr. Platts is going to speak specifically to the 100 York, 101 Washington Lane, and the steps that staff have been taking to resolve as many complaints as we can. And I believe there's a PowerPoint. I don't know how to make this. Oh, there we go. So I'll turn it over to Chris now.
Thank you.
Commissioners, thank you. So I'll speak to the interactions that have occurred, as you see in front of you, from February 3rd, the last time you received a distinct update, to yesterday. So in relation to the 100 York interactions, there have been 8 interactions with property management and maintenance staff conducted by either the fire marshal's office or primarily the property maintenance inspectors. 1 joint meeting between the township administration and property representatives happened here. There was numerous township staff present, as well as 6 representatives from the property, ranging all the way from the maintenance supervisor all the way up to their COO. There was 1 use and occupancy permit application received for the Washington Lane property on 2/17/23, and then, as Mr. McEnany mentioned, there was 1 refurbished elevator placed in service at the 101 Washington Lane property. I verified that with Pennsylvania L&I back on the 21st. In relation to concerns, there were 12 contacts specifically from residents regarding a variety of concerns to the property. There were 12 on-site property maintenance inspection with 1 denied entry. There was 1 notice of violation issued regarding curbs. There were, as mentioned earlier, 37 citations issued, 35 by myself the other day, 33 for failure to maintain fire extinguishers throughout the property, and 2 other issues. And there were also 2 citations from property maintenance for neglected wall ceilings and hallways and unlocked doors throughout the property. There is 1 court hearing also held back toward the end of February where 2 citations that occurred, and the property representatives pled guilty during that hearing. And then detailing the fire department responses that occurred, there were 5 responses to the buildings collectively over the course of this time period. 1 for a water leak with a broken pipe in a unit. It did significant damage to the property. That resident was relocated, and the work is ongoing to repair it. There were 2 elevator alarms in the 101 Washington Lane building in that refurbed elevator on the 25th and on the 28th. No one was actually found inside of them, but the fire department still does respond in those situations. On the 26th of February, there was an elevator entrapment. However, the doors opened and the occupant exited prior to the fire department arrival. The fire department still did secure power to that unit because it was obviously malfunctioning when we arrived. And then most recently last night, as Mr. McEnany mentioned, there was the elevator entrapment with some occupants stuck on the 5th floor. The fire department ended up forcing the door open due to some malfunctioning issues to get the occupants out. Power was again secured to the elevator. And after each of those issues with the elevator, just a question I was raised earlier, I do personally contact the maintenance supervisor to advise him that an elevator is out of service for the safety of the occupants, and that needs to call his elevator service company to get that addressed and repaired as soon as possible.
Thank you. Are there questions for members of the board for Mr. Platts? Commissioner Sapone.
Just a follow-up with the fire extinguishers that are in the hallway and about the building.
Correct.
Were they inspected and certified? They're tagged? That's all been completed, right?
Correct. So what happened was a resident had issued a complaint to our office that the extinguishers were out of date. Those extinguishers in the hallways generally require service every year. There are nuances depending on the extinguisher type, but quick reference is once a year they have to be serviced. I went and inspected. They were confirmed out of date due to a sampling of them, and the maintenance supervisor advised that if these ones are out, they're all out. So I issued them a notice to get that corrected within 30 days. I actually ended up giving them a little bit more time and then went back to inspect. I walked every hallway of both buildings, and then during that inspection process, we found 33 that were either still out of date, out of test for hydrostatic, empty, missing, a variety of reasons. So that is where those stood, so I issued those.
And in the hallways, is there emergency backup lighting, and is that all functioning?
To my knowledge, yes. So when I go to the properties, I do visually take a check on those. Each of those devices can be tested to see if they are functioning properly. But when I'm out there, I do notice that they are functioning.
All right, smoke detectors and
Yes.
all, they've been tested and all in the hallways and all?
As of my last annual inspection, they were. With the recent submission of the use and occupancy application, myself and the building inspector will be going out. Part of the use and occupancy process is an inspection by both of us. So during that inspection, at least on the fire side, we look at things like when was the last time the fire alarm, the sprinkler, the suppression system, hoses, extinguishers, all those things were tested in accordance with the required NFPA guidelines.
Thanks, Chris.
Of course.
Commissioner Schreiber?
I don't know if you can even answer this, because I don't know if you were at the meeting, but the meeting where the property, where you said there's a whole bunch of people from, all the way up to the CEO, and then you go back and there's all these violations. So at the meeting, do they say they're fixing them and everything's, maybe that's for you, Mr. Manfredi.
They were very cooperative. The COO was there. It was also Solicitor Gallagher was with us, and it was both of these gentlemen and other staff members, and a number of those folks. In fact, the reason that they denied entry was because the gentleman that was requested entry was at this meeting. So they were coming here, so they denied entry because they were coming to a meeting. They were very cooperative. They were very interested in working with the residents, and if the residents would like to meet with them, they offered to do so. So I think this is a situation where we are taking them at their word. It's the old saying, trust but verify. So we are doing just that. We are working with them, but we are not waiting, for compliance. We are insisting on compliance is probably a better way to say it.
Commissioner Behe, and then Commissioner Bond.
Any of these elevator issues on this slide, do they relate to the recently refurbished elevator?
The 2 elevator alarms do.
Okay.
And so the elevator alarm in the code requires that elevators have a button inside that, 1, presses a bell to ring a bell to let people know you're there, and 2, in case you don't have a cell phone or some other way to communicate out, it'll actually contact out to a third-party monitoring. And so what happens is, unfortunately, people accidentally hit it, don't really recognize it, and then leave the elevator. Standard process is if the elevator dispatcher goes into the elevator, says, hello, is anyone there, and no one answers, fire department comes because they assume that someone is incapacitated, unable to answer. So it's a unique problem. In the process of that, I'm working with the property maintenance staff, and he's comfortable with, we're going to place a small protective cover over it to prevent the accidental bumps.
Should further investigation be conducted to make sure it's accidentally bumped and not just a malfunction and it seems like a new system, there could be glitches.
Yep, so on the first call out there, I was with the fire department. I actually tested it while we were in the elevator to verify. And unfortunately, it does ring a little bit. It takes a little bit of time, so people just leave. But I did place temporarily stickers on it that advise people that if you do accidentally hit it, just wait a second and let them know you're fine, and then you can leave and go on about your day.
Thank you.
Commissioner Vaughn.
I don't know if you guys can answer this question, but with these 37 violations, are there a dollar amount associated with the fine or cost to the building that this is happening to? And is that something that they are, like, I don't know if that is it just a violation, like an email, you've been violation to XYZ so-and-so? Or is there a dollar amount associated with it that is forcing them to, okay, we now have to pay this fine, so this is the cost. We need to hurry up and get this corrected because it's associated with a dollar amount?
Correct. So the first step is we do the notice of violation, or in fire department, a deficiency report, noting down that you have a deficiency, and we give a general standard time to correct things depending on the severity and the scale of it. So with the extinguisher reference, I gave them 30 days plus a little bit extra due to the fact that there's at least 3 on each floor in a total of 20 floors and the basements. That's quite a few. It takes quite a bit of time. As for that, afterwards it goes to a citation, and that goes to the court. The court, we leave it up to the court to decide the penalty and what that will be imposed. The maximum is $1,000 per violation.
Commissioner DePlacido.
Thank you, Commissioner Hager. How many companies actually have to respond to, just say, basic elevator one, and what type of resources have to come with the company, including personnel?
Of course. So the elevator alarm, the one where someone pushes the button and there's no answer, is just dispatch. That's just McKinley Fire Company that goes out there, averaging 1 to 2 trucks and several members of the company. When there's an elevator entrapment, so someone's reporting that they are stuck in the elevator, it's McKinley Fire Company along with Weldon's rescue truck. So an additional truck and additional members.
That takes me back to my fine question, because if we're dispatching, let's say, the McKinley fire truck and the rescue truck, we're paying these people to go out, and if their fine is a maximum of $1,000, I just feel like that's not enough for them to correct the behavior. But again, I don't know if this is the appropriate place to ask that question, but this is what I'm thinking.
You cannot charge someone for emergency services that their tax dollars are going to support. There are certain things you can do. You can do, for false alarms. If the fire department has to go out, you can fine them for multiple false alarms if they're not getting their alarms corrected. But a call out like this it's not permitted to charge them back for any of the costs that may be incurred.
Thank you. Commissioner Spiegelman.
Thank you, President Hecker. This is, I guess, Chris, this might be a question more for Mike. Following up on Commissioner Vaughn's question, obviously, we are constrained in our ability to set fines. We don't have a mechanism for some fine that, in effect, will make the property owner hurt and really get their attention. Is there anything within the purview of the district justice if the district justice, like obviously in this case it would be Judge Price, just gets frustrated with this property owner, and it's clear in her estimation this property owner she deems like a scofflaw. Is there something could she basically take our fines and multiply them under her discretion? She doesn't have that authority?
No, she does not. She's constrained by what's in the codes.
Okay. I can dream. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Spiegelman. Are there other, Commissioner Weingrad?
And just so we're clear, the violations can be $1,000 per day per violation. Okay. All right, so they do add up. I am the ward commissioner, in that area. I am immensely concerned about the residents that are there, and that's why we're here, and we're looking to update the code. In addition, for other residents, you know, in the township, I mean, this is a real problem with, because it's taxpayer funds, right? You talked about, you know, all that's necessary, whether it's the fire, the police, property maintenance people. I mean, we have an incentive as a governing body here to make sure that property owners do what they're supposed to be doing, because it's a drain on township resources and therefore all the taxpayers. So, like I said, I'm very happy that this is being expedited. I think that this is while it's not a cure-all, it's definitely a step in the right direction, and it's something, if this code is strictly construed and we continue to prosecute, the hope is that the property owner will get the picture.
Exactly. Thank you, Commissioner Weingart. Any final comments or questions for either Mr. Platts or Mr. McEnany?
Commissioner Agra, I just have one final comment.
Yes.
I just want to make it clear to everyone in the room and everyone who's watching, the adoption of the International Property Maintenance Code is being done because the township's codes need to be updated. It is not being done solely in response to
Correct.
the issues at this property, nor will it solely apply to this property. The issues regarding elevators will be enforced township-wide. All of these issues will be enforced township-wide.
Yeah. Thank you, Solicitor Clark, for that clarification. So I guess the next opportunity would be if there's a motion.
Mr. President, I would move to advertise an ordinance to repeal Chapter 98, Housing Standards in its entirety, replace it with the International Property Maintenance Code of 2021 with the proposed amendments, and repealing all inconsistent ordinances. And I so move.
Second.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded. We will now take public comment on this agenda item. If there are residents here who wish to speak to it, please come forward. Oh. Thank you, sir. Go ahead, man.
The president covered it.
Welcome back. Please, it was a lot said. Again, my name is George. It was a lot said. I don't want to be rushed because through all this, I have a lot to say.
Okay.
Okay? I do appreciate everybody doing what their job and helping us. Definitely, me and Chris go back since last year. As far as the elevators concerned, you know, we finally got 2, now we got 1. Last year, that new refurbished elevator, 2 people did get stuck on it, the new one. So they was out last year, and they wasn't supposed to have been on that elevator because it wasn't inspected. But it was running, and people did get stuck on it last year. So do we trust that elevator? No, we don't trust that elevator at all. Now that elevator is being used all this for everybody in this building, believe me, I'm scared to say it's going to have problems too. Again, far as I do take their word, I'm the type of person, I have plenty conversation with Ms. Janelle Silcox. But I have reached out to her on many occasions to meet with the property manager, to meet with whoever owns the building, to have meetings concerning that building. Emails, I have my emails, I have phone calls, everything. They will not reach out. They will not meet with me. I actually talked to the property manager, Charles, to set up a meeting. He will not meet with me concerning the issues going on in that building. Now, I read that code and everything else, the structure code. I met with Chris, or talked to Chris about the garage, where it leaks at. I sent him pictures. I just sent Mr. Stewart pictures the other day of the garage where I park my car, where the building is crumbling from water. I've been going on issues, been saying nothing's wrong. Now it's coming so far that you can see pipes coming along. I'm scared that it's going to get worse and that building is going to come down. Nobody's doing anything about it at all. Now, I have a garage. I pay for the garage. I'm not disputing the payment. It's not your jurisdiction. I am taking them to court. The garage door is broke. I sent Mr. Stewart, pictures. And that's a safety concern. We have somebody sleeping in other apartments that don't belong in the building. It's a safety concern. They know about it. I emailed her again and got no response. They are not working with us. They can care less about us. I went to court last week. And you know what she told me? If you want, you can vacate. I'm a good person. I'm a nice person. I came over here. I grew up in Elkins Park. My son goes to Abington. Why would I want to vacate? To me, that's like you don't care. Something needs to be done. Seriously needs to be done to make these people care. Yes, between now and from the last meeting to now, you know what they sent us? An email about, hooray, we're doing renovations. I can care less about y'all fixing up our lobby. I can care less if y'all fixing up the 8th floor. I just want a building that's safe, not just for me, for the elderly people, for all the other tenants, for the single mothers. I just want a building where we have working elevators for a senior citizen. I have people, friends that I got close to. I've been in this building 3 years. Some of these people just moved in this building and are leaving the building, leaving the township. And they're good people, all because of these owners who don't care. I'm serious. I'm about to cry because I'm getting emotional because I'm so fed up. They tell y'all one thing, but yet they do another thing. I'm sorry. Some of y'all, I know y'all questions, but we need help. Make them care. Enforce what y'all can enforce. Tell us what we can do to even help enforce. Make the judge whatever. I met Ms. Price. Yeah, I can say, yeah, she helped me a little bit, but it's not enough. It's not enough. And I'm about to take them back to court. Now, the structure, we need to figure out how that fits in.
We will have Mr. Platts follow up
Because it
directly.
needs to be done. And I have pictures. Pipes still leaking. I sent him pictures of that.
Okay, let's make
Mold
sure
still
the
leaking.
proper officials have those, and we can see what can be done.
I'll make sure you have them too.
Yeah.
Yes, because it's not getting fixed.
Well, keep bringing the matter forward, please.
All right? I have more, but my time is up.
Thank you, Mr. Clay.
Okay.
My name is Linda Lee Muntz. I live at 47 Twin Brooks in Willow Grove. I want to thank everyone for these new codes. I would like to see them start being enforced today, not wait for a month. I know you'd like them published. I could care less about someone publishing these. I want these people saved, and these codes will help. The other thing I'm hearing, it's going to be a lot cheaper for the fool, well, not the fool, the very wise person who owns this property to pay your fines. There's no motivation for them to do anything. It's taken you probably over a year to reach this point. You're going to drag them into court. They're going to have a better lawyer than yours, probably. They're going to win. You know, this is a losing game. I would also like to know the real owners of this property. I would like to hear a name instead of a corporation, a management, whoever works for them. Because maybe their homes need to be picketed. And maybe people should have their name splashed across a newspaper as the slum landlord who owns this property, which the township of Abington cannot make safe. I would love to see their name in the newspaper in big letters, because this is the slum landlord who has properties in Abington Township, this wonderful township that we're supposedly proud of. It took my learning about 100 York Road to realize that I cannot be proud of Abington Township. I'm very upset what I'm seeing. I should not see that gentleman come here month after month with complaints. Do we need something big to happen that it splashed across the nightly news, and we're all going to have to stand here and say, you know, we knew, but we couldn't do anything, and we fined them a few $1,000s. You know what $1,000 means to a slum landlord like this? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I am so sad to feel like we are now powerless. Whoever owns this has won. And I would ask that somehow you get the names of the real people who own this and get them into a newspaper. And maybe that will motivate them, because nothing else will. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other residents who are in the room who wish to speak to this agenda item? And if not, we will turn to Zoom.
Kizzy Wooten, you're unmuted.
Hello again, everyone. I had an incident today in regards to, and thank you, George, for speaking about the renovations, the cosmetic renovations that are happening, which actually were happening today on my floor. I live on the 8th floor. And they're basically, instead of them doing the right thing and replacing the drywall, they chose to put spackle throughout the whole hallway and sand everything down. I just happened to be coming back from walking my dog, and it was a cloud, a huge cloud of dust particles, and I just hurried through it. I had to walk, by the way, from the other end of the building, because that's the one elevator that was working. My only other option was to maybe go down the steps from the 8th floor and then go back up on the other side. But I said, okay, I'm gonna take a chance and just hurry over to the way on the other side of the building to my unit. Once I got in my unit, I felt sick. I had a headache. I felt like I was getting a cold. I had, like my chest was felt like it was congesting, and my throat was feeling scratchy. I was coughing, and I actually had a confrontation, not really a confrontation, but the people who were doing the work, I was taking pictures of what was happening just as proof, just in case, because we know how the law works. I may have to be sick in order to sue. I don't want to get sick to have to sue. I don't want to have to go through all that. And I sent an email about this, and that's why I didn't mention it earlier, but I sent an email to Commissioner Weingrad about this. I was so upset. I went into my apartment. I was crying. I was so upset. I just want to say that as a child, I always loved strawberry shortcake. I wanted to live in Strawberry Mansion, which most people know is North Philadelphia. It's like a nightmare. Just imagine that I wanted to live there just like I wanted to live here. And this is that nightmare that's happening. I could have moved anywhere I wanted to. My income is well enough to move wherever I wanted. I wanted to move here. And it's just a complete nightmare. So I just wanted to paint that picture for everyone to just understand how I feel about this. This is devastating to me. And again, thank you for everyone listening and who attended. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sarah Love Hughes, you're unmuted.
Hi, good evening. Sarah Love Hughes, resident of the 101 building. George, thank you for being there in person and being as diligent and committed as you have always been. And Kizzy, as always, thank you for speaking up. And thank you for those who come after me. Thank you for the woman from Willow Grove for having empathy for our situation. I'm leaving. I'm leaving the building. I'm leaving the township. The woman from Willow Grove spoke. She's correct. These owners have won. I had cancerous tissue removed from my leg yesterday. I had leg surgery. Elevator's broken. I was told not to take steps. Guess what? It was walk a quarter of a mile to the other elevator, which I didn't know was working this morning when I took the steps. The rodents, my water pressure. I can't take a shower. I was also instructed before surgery to take a shower with, antibacterial soap. I can't take a shower, you guys, because when I incorporate hot water into my spigot, the water pressure goes down so low, I have about, no exaggeration, I have video, 5 to 8 giant drops that I can shower under. I now have a wound on my leg. I just pulled into my garage. I'm about to take the steps up to my apartment. Thankfully, I'm on the 3rd floor, not the 8th like Kizzy, but they won, you guys. I'm leaving. My lease is up at the end of April. I will not return to this township. I will never live in this building. This has been, I'm getting emotional too. This has been a complete nightmare. A complete nightmare with no resolution. It's actually getting worse. It's actually getting worse. And I just, it's unfathomable to me. I am a professional single mother who works hard. This was my chapter 2. Like Kizzy, I wanted to live there. I believed the website. I overlooked so much. I didn't complain about Christmas. I didn't complain about Thanksgiving. Had I known what this would roll into, certainly I would have complained and documented it, but I can live with a lot. But I can't take it anymore. And Kizzy's describing the renovations. It's just gonna come down and down. And why is there $3 million to renovate? And yet 4 elevators, and no freight elevator, mind you, in that building. So the one working elevator that you all are referencing that is on the far, far side of the building is a very small passenger elevator that our gentleman that takes care of our environmental services now has to roll trash from every trash room to that elevator to get it down 8 floors every morning. I watch him. He's one of the hardest working men I've ever seen. 8 floors every morning. How they've retained them, I don't know. You guys, they beat me. You've heard me on the last meetings. You've heard me advocating. I'm a social worker by trade. Advocacy is in my blood. And I'm just heartbroken. This has been a nightmare. I will never, ever return to this township. My lease is up in June, and I will never return to Abington. My daughter graduates and I'm gone, and it's a direct result of this building and this poor management. I have nothing but well wishes and high hopes for the people that remain, but people are going by the droves. If you look at the dumpsters on move-out day, you don't see the trucks moving in. You see all of the furniture in the dumpsters. People are fed up. And the people that are moving in have no idea. I just met a new tenant on my floor, professional gentleman. Probably also could have moved anywhere that he wanted to. He had no idea. And he is in about a week into his lease. And I can only offer him minimal observations because I don't want to ruin, what may turn out to be a decent living experience for him. But I don't see how that's possible. And they beat me, you guys. So, the woman from Willow Grove is right. They beat me. They win. And Abington Township is losing residents from this building, and with really hard, sad, defeated is how I feelings. And now having to uproot myself again after a horrible move, getting into this building and looking forward to nothing but a clean chapter 2. And it's been the worst living situation I've ever had, ever. And I've lived in some apartments in my 20s that were, not so desirable, but this is unlike anything you can imagine until you experience it. You just can't. So I don't have, anything to say except that I hope that moving forward things go well. I don't anticipate it. They have more money and more power than any of these residents. And again, the smoke and mirrors and the veils and everything have completely done me in. My mental and physical health has been affected, and I can't do it anymore. And I can't believe that it's due to the management of this building that I have to uproot myself, because there's no other reason I would be leaving. I would be remaining in the township, which I love. When I sold my home in Rockledge, still in Abington Township, I've lived here for years. My children went through the school system. My husband went through the school system. He's a lifetime Abington Township resident. This breaks my heart. And it's because of these owners and managers. It's because of this entity. It's not worth the fight anymore. I can't take it mentally or physically. I cannot take it anymore. And so I just want you to hear, like, you've heard me being an advocate. You've heard me being, you know, maybe not always so kind and polite. And now you hear me defeated and broken. This is it. I'm done. I don't have anything else to say. And I thank you for letting me speak.
We thank you for speaking.
Laura Lehman.
Laura Lehman, Meadowbrook. As all of you know, I've been working with these apartments for over 8 years. And Mr. Weingrad not taking my calls and then telling people he didn't know what was happening. And I've spoken with somebody who told him a year ago they sat in a parking lot and she told him everything that was going on in there. I won't tell you what he said back, but it's just nonsense. In September, there was an article that talked about 100 York, where Kim Ham said there weren't any code issues there. It's unbelievable. So, you know, the residents are all just angry at the landlord. I'm angry at the 37 violations that were there a year ago. Those extinguishers were out. 2021 was the last time they were inspected. So mid-2022, they were out of inspection. From that time on, Abington Township was responsible. The fire service provider is supposed to respond to Abington Township. Mr. Rohrer was the one who was in charge when all those violations happened 10 years ago. So, you know, you have responsibility on that dais. You have responsibility. I hope you'll invite Steve Klein to one of these meetings where the residents are. Invite him, because what you did not vote to have him stand down per the grand jury, and you voted to put him on the zoning hearing board, where he is affecting lives again. Guernsey Avenue, for one, Mr. Spiegelman, and he is affecting lives again. That didn't qualify for a variance and shouldn't have been done. So it's Abington Township people not following the rules. And this particular new code actually has some things in it that are better, okay? But you had absolutely no right to fast forward this through without first, if you wanted to fast forward something, fast forward a meeting with the tenants to find out exactly what all their concerns are and make sure that they're addressed, okay? And there is, for instance, no freight elevator still in there. It's still illegal. It's illegal for anybody to bring freight up to the 8th or 12th floor of a building with no freight elevator or a passenger elevator that's been certified for freight. And where's Mr. Heil that should be seeing whether these things are done? Is Mr. Heil overseeing? Mr. Heil is our building code inspector for the listening audience, and he's with Code Inspections, who has been around through all the renovation period. Code Inspections was there. And now they're our building code official, and Robert Heil is the man who's there. Is he in the meeting tonight? Yes or no? Is Mr. Heil in the meeting tonight, please?
I don't believe so.
No.
Ms. Lehman, I'm going to ask you to wrap up your comments. Your time has expired.
My time has not expired. That was not the time that I want. Mr. Heil should know if there's no posting there. They're operating without a leasing and rental license. They're operating without a management license. They are operating in ways that the township has known, and our current code actually allowed for many of those violations to be sent. And they should have been sent swiftly, and they should have sent a message right away that we're not messing around with you. And that was at least before September, when the September article came out. And Kim Han said, oh yes, well, we've had some concerns, some calls from there. I do have some other very important things to do.
Ms. Lehman, thank you for your comments. Your
Let
time
me
has
just
expired.
please.
Julie Mahone, you're unmuted.
Hi everyone, my name is Julie Mahone and I'm an Abington resident, and I currently live at the 100 York Apartments in the 101 building with my newborn. Very exciting. My fellow neighbors have said so much already, so I'll keep my remarks short and sweet. As a tenant, we've all signed binding contracts that should allow us the basic living conditions of all Abington residents, right? Which include safety, protection, health, and soundness of the building, and we don't have that. I am really tired of continuing to come back to these meetings and continuing to complain, and I know you probably are all tired of hearing all of us, but what we really need right now is a resolution, and the changes to the code are great, but it's not enough to have to deal with the property in general. So if there's anything else that we can continue to do to fight the good fight here at 100 York, please keep us in the loop, but it's just not working, and it seems from what my other tenants, my neighbors are saying, that it's just, we need to do more because it's not enough here. Haven't been out of the apartment for a while, and I'm nervous to go out to see what the renovations are doing, and I'm nervous to bring things home because I have a newborn, and I really don't want the whatever Kizzy was saying is going on the 8th floor to come into my own apartment. So please continue to help us and to fight AJH and whoever is the owner of the property, so that we can have at least whatever we are supposed to be provided from our contracts, because it's not being offered here, and they need to keep up their end of the deal. But that's all I have to say. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ms. Mahon. Okay, so we. Okay.
As far as the smoke detectors and CO2.
Oh, can you come up to the microphone? Thank you.
I meant to ask this, I'm sorry. As
It's
far as
okay.
the smoke detector and the CO2 that's in the apartments, are they supposed to be inspected, or who checks on them? Because I've been in my building apartment for 3 years and nobody checked them. So that's the question for him.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Potts.
That's a good question. So regards to the units, the detection systems in the hallway are part of the monitored system that will activate the horns and strobes throughout the building. Inside the unit, generally most properties are going to be local battery powered, like everyone has in their own homes for the most part. As for the maintenance and upkeep of those, it depends on your lease. As an unfortunate statement as that is, most oftentimes the landlord will put the batteries, the testing of it monthly onto the tenant, whereas the providing of it is usually required of the landlord themselves. So it varies depending on your lease. As long as they're there, that's generally the requirement, but
Thank you, Mr. Platts. Okay, we have had a motion and a second. So all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. We will continue with the new business agenda, and I will turn to Board Vice President Matt Vahey.
Next item of new business is BOC-08030923. Motion to approve resolution number 23-005, submission of the Abington Master Bicycle Plan Implementation Project, grant application to Montgomery County Monco 2040 Grant Program. Nice to move.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries.
Next item of new business is BOC-09030923. Motion to approve an extension for agreement C000072116 by and between the Department of Community and Economic Development for the Multimodal Transportation Fund Grant, which supports the Abington-Jenkintown Connections Project until June 30th, 2024. Nice to move.
Second. It has been moved and seconded. Are there any comments or questions for members of the board? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries.
And our last item of new business is BOC-10-030923. Motion to appoint Lance Weatherly to the Planning Commission for a term ending on December 31st, 2027, and Kate Schoner to the Zoning Hearing Board for a term ending on December 31st, 2028, as included in Exhibit A. And I so move.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Are there any comments or questions from members of the board? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries.
That concludes the new business of the Board of Commissioners, Mr. President.
Thank you, Vice President Vehy. We will now turn to matters of the Finance Committee, and I will turn to Finance Committee Chair, Commissioner Stuart Weingrad.
Thank you, President Hecker. One item we have is FC 01030923, motion to approve the January 2023 expenditures in the amount of $2,744,435.57, and salaries and wages in the amount of $2,546,390.56, and authorizing the proper officials to sign vouchers and payment of bills and contracts as they mature through the month of April 2023, and I so move.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioners Brodsky?
Sure, why not?
Rothman?
Yes.
DePlacido?
Yes.
Vaughn?
Yes.
Thompson?
Yes.
Weingrad?
Yes.
Henry?
Yes.
Sapone?
Yes.
Carswell?
Yes.
Spiegelman?
Yes.
Bowl? Schreiber?
Yes.
Bowman?
Yes.
Vice President Vehy?
Yes.
President Hecker?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you.
And that would conclude the Finance Committee agenda items for this evening.
Thank you, Commissioner Weingrad. We will now open it up for public comment on general matters of township business. You may come forward. Let's state your name and address, or just name and neighborhood, and then you have 3 minutes.
Okay, my name's Adele, and I live in Kubel, Kubel, and I live in Abington. In April, it will be 2 years since I first asked Mr. Manfredi to address Abington blight. Urban-style blight is now heavily present in Abington due to Mr. Manfredi's policies. What have I learned in the past 2 years? These are the bullet points. Mr. Manfredi and Ms. Ham collaborate to deny blight. Ms. Ham refers to blight as litter. Abington never had a litter problem before Mr. Manfredi took control of the township. Mr. Manfredi and Ms. Ham grant years-long extensions to dangerously blighted commercial businesses and apartments. Mr. Manfredi, when will these extensions end? Commercial businesses and apartment owners know that blight is acceptable in Abington. Ms. Ham never issues citations or fines to any of the businesses or apartment owners. Business owners have asked me to get the township to regularly maintenance the streets. Mr. Manfredi and commissioners have only one priority: rapid and dangerous land development. The motto is put an apartment complex in every congested parking lot. These thoughtless apartment developments will create more poor living situations for many more people. Residents' questions and concerns are never answered. It is impossible to get answers. Mr. Manfredi and commissioners never answer email or phone calls. Mr. Manfredi runs from the room to avoid residents. Free speech is reduced to 3 minutes once a month. Censorship regularly happens at Abington board meetings. Audio and visual problems are claimed, and the administration cuts to black screen to edit out anything that might present the leadership in a poor light. Mr. Hecker, is this what Governor Shapiro wanted for Abington? Governor Shapiro went door to door endorsing your leadership abilities. Did Governor Shapiro want Abington to become a blighted community with congestion and growing numbers of car accidents? Did Governor Shapiro want to create a never-ending number of poorly considered apartments in an increasingly urbanized and blighted township? Did Governor Shapiro want 1%ers to control the decision-making process in Abington? Again, Mr. Manfredi has a salary that pays him at the same level as the governor. Why? Mr. Manfredi has 3 personal assistants and numerous outside consultants. Yet, Mr. Manfredi has not accomplished anything that benefits residents. Mr. Manfredi, do not insist on a constantly manicured lawn for the township building this year. Old York Road islands last year while your township building was constantly manicured, the islands on Old York Road grew to 6 feet high. I have photos. These huge weeds were a safety hazard to drivers and pedestrians. This lack of concern for other people is a bad look for the township manager. Please stop expanding blight. I have called, these are photos
Cabell,
of right near
your
we live,
time
of
is-
open dumpsters.
Your time has expired.
Never contacted me to update me with anything.
We have a detailed update.
Where is it?
Mr. Manfredi was prepared to speak to it.
When she's completed.
After you sit down, Ms.
All
Cabell.
right, I want you to see, though, that these are the islands. This is weeds and trash. More islands on Old York Road. More sidewalks. I know it's nice to have bike lanes and everything, but can't you have businesses fix their sidewalks this year?
Mr. Manfredi?
Thank you, President Hecker. Mr. McEnany, if you would, please. A couple things I'd like to mention. First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. McNeil for the fantastic job he does making sure that the People's Building looks good. He manages our landscape crews, and he does a tremendous job, not only here, but throughout all the properties of the township, and I want to recognize the work that he does rather than ridicule him for it. The only thing that I really want to address, one of the things that we've done over time, and I think it's necessary that I say this because I hear this on a regular basis, people could say what they'd like about me, and that's fine. They're entitled to their opinions. But Ms. Ham has spent many times meeting with the commenter, and she had...
Many times meeting with me? I've never met with her.
So, Mr. McEnany, if you would, I know there were various meetings that go back to November and December with Ms. Kubel. I don't know if you want to touch on those before we get into what we're doing now with the complaints that she puts forward.
Sure. Good evening, everybody. It's my understanding there were maybe not in-person meetings, but phone calls, lengthy phone calls with Ms. Ham, as well as Mr. Salnek, who recently retired as our longtime property maintenance inspector. Yes, he did. As well as, I believe, Deputy Chief Quinn from the police department, as well as Mr. Van Horn, who is also one of our property maintenance inspectors, to address a lot of these ongoing issues that the speaker is referencing. As a result, we have here a list of all the properties that have been referred to us by Ms. Kubel over the past, this is before my, there you go, 2 years. And it's really the same properties over and over again. We're at the point now where our property maintenance inspectors go out twice per week to inspect these properties, to check upon them. The updates you see here are as of today. Some of them are up to date, as you can see. Some of them, Mr. Van Horn will be going out.
We're actually not seeing anything.
Oh,
it's coming.
I'm sorry. I see it here. I apologize. There you go. And it's, I don't know how to make it. Is that better? Okay. As I said, Mr. Van Horn, who is our property maintenance inspector right now, goes out twice a week for the last several months at the very least. I don't have the exact time frame on that as well. And as you can see, the resolution as of today, there are certainly some issues that he has outstanding. As you can see, Raymore and Flanagan, there was a citation issued. Nifty 50s, there was a violation issued. There was 6 citations issued for curbs along the Edge Hill Bridge area. And there are several that are going to be, well, these will all be re-inspected again tomorrow. So this is something that has been, we do spend a lot of time checking on this stuff, twice a week. So it's not something, we're not blowing it off. We're spending a lot of staff hours checking this stuff on a regular basis. The problem, obviously, when it's things like trash and things like that, you check it one day, it's a windy day, it blows trash around, it's there the following day. But we do our best to stay on top of this as much as we can.
I'd also like to add, in terms of the residents' questions go unanswered, I know, and concerns, I know for a fact that Mr. Jones, the Public Works Director, has met with Ms. Cabell, has gone out to the site, shown where the street sweeper has been run. I believe he was out cleaning the islands, if not last week, the week before. I think the commenter made her points, and all we're trying to do is point out to the board so you understand that there are residents, these concerns are being addressed. They have been addressed. There have been numerous conversations about this. This is an ongoing matter that we continue to address. And as you heard, it's 2 visits weekly. We are going to be coming into the spring season. Mm-hmm. We have 1.5, as they say, property maintenance inspectors, and we have a lot of property to cover. And we will continue to respond, God bless you, as much as we possibly can, and we'll continue to look into these things. But I don't think it's, in my opinion, I think that we have a lot of dedicated employees, and I think those dedicated employees do respond, and they do address the concerns that are raised.
Thank you. You have to press the button, but we're not having a debate.
Okay, I wasn't aware that I have to press the button. These photos were taken last week. When I bring them, they're up to date, they're last week.
So, Ms. Cabell, I would advise
the videos, what you put up there on the screen, I have not gotten that update myself.
That was what we were preparing in response to your email to me last week.
Yes, I appreciate that, but I also want you to know that I went there today at Raymore and Flanagan, and this is the same look today. I saw it before I come here. I look at these places, these dumpsters that are open right where we live, Ms. Carswell, stay open. I call them. I called you. I called the District Taco. I've called the Toll Brothers property, and they're always, always open, which makes it difficult. This area here on Old York Road, 2 years it's been just about, and it stays the same. This is a great time to get people to fix their cement. I do take my photos. Mr. Manfredi, I took this photo.
All right, Mrs.
And
Cabell.
I gave it, no, I wanted you to know what I do because I've spent hundreds of hours. I took it to the store and I said, I'm taking photos. I didn't have the photo, but I said, see that out there? I'm taking photos of it for my record. This does not look suburban.
So what I would advise.
This was 2 weeks. What?
What I would advise, if you have current pictures that reflect conditions that don't meet the standards, then I would ask you to give them to Mr. McEnany.
I'm not
and
going
Mr.
to give them
Platts.
to him because I've given him so many and I emailed him so many. And the cement situation stays the same. And I've been, this is a photo from last year, but the same situation is now. It shouldn't be that way. These islands are right in front of where we are right
Ms.
now.
Cabell, I'm going to ask you to take your seat now. Thank you.
But I would like a copy of what was just presented here because I didn't get it.
Okay.
When will I get it?
Thank you.
Well, when will I get a copy?
We'll get a copy to you of the current status of the resolution.
All right, I'd like that because I'm not getting a copy, and I am photographing horrendous blight in Abington,
Okay.
and it's urban blight, not
Thank-
suburban blight.
All right,
It's real urban.
Thank you,
In
Ms.
the
Cabell.
ugliest way.
Thank
It's not
you.
a little bit of trash on the side of the street anymore, it's extensive.
thank you. Are there other residents who wish to make general public comment? Yeah.
What button do I push here? Mr. Brodsky? Long time no see. Good. Okay, Shady Lane, when you go under the bridge, crossing bridge, the Park Bridge, is
Oh,
that...
yeah. Could you give us your name, sir? We
Yeah,
didn't-
Richard Flanagan, Raymond Flanagan, middle name's Raymond.
Thank you.
All right. 323 Shady Lane. So when you go under the bridge there on Shady Lane, am I in Abington Township, or am I in Rockledge, am I in Philadelphia? Where exactly am I at? I'm going east now, I'm going towards Pennypack. Where am I at?
I believe, without knowing the specific spot, that's probably the border at that point. I can't tell you the specific location you're referencing, but I can have a look at it, get a picture to show me.
No, it's behind the nursing, the sister's house or whatever.
That's the end of Ward 3. That's the end of Ward 3.
That's the end of Ward 3 right there at the bridge, once you go under, if you're coming from.
Okay, so I'm
Giant down
still in Abington.
At the bridge.
At the bridge. Okay, so now I continue to, the turns and all, and now I get to Philadelphia at Pine Road. On the left side there, Fox Chase Farms. That's Philadelphia? It
Yes.
is. Okay, the reason why I'm asking is because you know how the weeds grow out, then bushes grow all the way out into the street? You aware of that either? Yes. Okay. Who takes care of them? Who cuts them? Is it Abington Township? Is it the Fairmount Park Commission?
I think that's Philadelphia.
That's Philadelphia.
So that,
Right on the edge, right on the edge of that point.
Okay, so actually Philadelphia comes out and cuts them?
I don't know if
Okay.
they do, but that is the city of Philadelphia
Okay.
property.
All right, I'll look into that, thank you. Now, the holes on the opposite side of the street that they get filled, they ripped up in a month, filled, ripped up, and that house is in Montgomery County side. You know what I'm talking about? They get deep too, them holes get pretty deep. I mean, I don't. I mean, I know you take Shady Lane. If you go down Shady Lane, before you get to Philadelphia on the right-hand side, there's a house that sits off the road, has a picket fence. Well, there's all kinds of holes, potholes, all along there.
So for purposes of specificity, I prefer to see a picture of what you're specifically referencing. If you have something.
I'll have a seat, I'll get it on my phone, and I'll bring it up to you, and that's fine. Yeah, because they're always filled in, but I don't know what you're filling it in with, because within, weeks, it's back up. And they get deep, too, them things get deep. Okay? So that's what I'll do, I'll look it up, and I'll bring it back up to you. I'll show you the photo.
there's the app that we have now where within the township, you can go in there, notify us, and then track it on your own so that once it's addressed,
Yeah.
you're able to see the update on such things as that. So that app or through the website is pretty helpful for the situations you're describing. I can send you a link to that if you need it.
Okay, but you don't know where I'm talking about exactly, and you don't know exactly what I'm talking about? I'd have to show you.
I need you to be more specific in terms of what specifically you're referencing.
Give me a couple minutes, I'll bring it back up. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Chris Brock. I live at 1853 Guernsey Avenue. I have something I'd like to bring up. It does relate to Abington, but you have to trust me to get there. 3 days ago, a political pundit at a popular political action conference was met with cheers when he called for the eradication of transgenderism from public life. Over the course of the last few months, many states and localities have passed bills banning drag performances, criminalizing gender-affirming healthcare for adults and children, and restricting teachers from even acknowledging the existence of gay or trans people. These are not random, isolated events. This is an organized, well-funded campaign against the very lives of transgender people, with eradication as its goal. The hospital in Abington provides gender-affirming care. We have transgender people in Abington, we have gay people in Abington. This is a coordinated campaign against them, and that makes it an attack on every single one of us. I would like to ask this board to take action as soon as possible to resist these attacks and to reassure members of our community that it will protect their lives and essential human dignity. The board has a number of options modeled by other communities. We can direct local police not to cooperate with out-of-state agencies seeking to persecute trans people or the parents of trans children. We can coordinate with the hospital to make sure that they have the resources they need to protect people who are seeking gender-affirming care. We can, at the very least, offer a resolution affirming our community's commitment to the essential human rights of all of its members, especially our trans members, who are among the most vulnerable. I know this is probably not what people were expecting to have to deal with today. I know that the board primarily deals with zoning and property taxes and things like that. But we don't get to choose the times in which we live or the occasions to which we must rise. I think that every decent, compassionate human being here would stand up when it is time to stand up, just as I think that anybody, no matter their political party, would break with that political party when it begins calling for the eradication of its fellow Americans. I would again urge this board to take immediate and decisive action. Trans rights are human rights. An abrogation of those rights is an abrogation of everyone's rights. An injury to one is an injury to all. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
The intersection by Little Grove Mall, Welsh Road and Eastern Road, going this way. You know it's always backed up, always. And I think people are confused about the sign where you can make left turns, because nobody goes into the right lane. It's two lanes. They always stay in the middle, and it's so backed up. It's either go this way, turn on to Eastern Road left, or go straight. Is there a way, or I don't know if y'all can, because I hate that road because it's always backed up, to really get them to go into the right lane if you're going straight? Because if you're going straight, they just stays in that one middle lane. They do not go into that right lane unless they turn it right. It's been like that for so long. Even when I lived in Philadelphia and came that way, it's been like that. And it just backs up traffic all the way back because nobody goes into that right lane. Nobody. And I know y'all have to see that. If y'all go there every day between after 5 o'clock or something like that, between 4 and 5, you'll see a long line because nobody goes into that right lane.
So that's Ward 5. I'm trying to understand, if it's the mall on your left or right side?
Well, the mall is straight.
Okay, so you're on Eastern Road?
No, I'm on Welsh Road going towards the mall.
Okay.
So
that's
yeah.
not Ward 5.
Yeah.
So is there a way we can get either signage or something better for cars to help with the traffic to go into that right lane if they going straight or turning right?
There may be.
Because it's just backed up constantly every day.
If I'm recalling the street correctly, part of the issue, because I drive that way quite a bit myself, is that the right turn lane doesn't begin until you get closer to the intersection. And so anybody who's going to be making a right turn is stuck in that middle lane until they get closer to the intersection.
Right, but even though if they even go straight, because you can go straight too.
Yeah, I agree.
But even the cars going straight don't even go on that lane. There's plenty of times where there's no cars in that lane that go straight. They stuck in the middle.
I think I know what's going, like, I'm there often and I am going straight from there. And if you are, you can turn right on red. And if you are not turning right on red, people behind you get very, very angry and you get honks and stuff. So some people have been conditioned by folks on the road to avoid being in that lane. I know what you mean.
Yeah, I'm just saying because it's always backed up. And I'm just trying to figure out, is there a better way we can get that resolved where it's not always traffic every day, even on Saturdays?
I'm sure.
I hate going that way. I really do.
I'm sure, Commissioner.
And I have to go that way. that,
It's a
I'm not
state.
sure if that's y'all or the state. I'm just asking a
Yeah,
question.
that's a PennDOT road. That's not an Abington road.
So that is,
That's part of the issue.
that's all I wanted to know.
Thank you, Mr. Clay. Is there anyone else in the room who wishes to speak on general township matters? And if not, we'll go to Zoom.
Ross Abel, you're unmuted.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Mr. Bell, thank you.
Hi, yeah, Ross Abel.
Abel, sorry.
Noble neighborhood. First off, I wanted to also agree with the speaker that I would 100% support any resolution that the board may draft to protect trans people. And also just wanted to sympathize with the 100 York folks, again, hearing all the stories. I hate that you're having to go through all that. I wanted to, again, support the township pursuing funding for sidewalks for my neighborhood, specifically kind of east of Jenkintown, specifically routes like Rydell, adding in sidewalks to connect us to the fairway, make it safer for our kids and elderly to get around so many people aren't just walking on the roads. Also, I wanted to mention that other townships like Cheltenham, Haverford have been doing traffic calming studies with PennDOT for major arteries. It seems like from the federal level, there's more openness now to doing traffic calming on these state roads. So I would love for the township to partner or look at partnering with Jenkintown and Cheltenham to do a regional traffic calming study for 611. We would qualify for unique funding if we made it across municipalities, such an effort. So I don't know if anyone has discussed that at the township level, but I would love to get the support of the township, because for those of us who frequently are moving around York Road with our families day in and day out, it's a scary environment. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you for the suggestion. Appreciate it.
Laura Lehman, you're unmuted.
Laura Lehman, Meadowbrook. I also want to stand with Chris Brack and thank him for making those comments. 37 dockets and the 2 lists from January and February of the things you've done. Please deliver them to George Clay. He's right there now. Have somebody go Xerox them and give them to George Clay to bring back and share with all the residents. And please give all of the updates to George, if that's okay, George. Judge Price can do something. She sees person after person come in there and not even know that they're supposed to fill out a counterclaim, so they can't claim anything because they didn't know they were supposed to do it. She can give them a counterclaim when she sends them the summons. She can tell her secretaries when they come in, here's a counterclaim form. Here, fill it out before you go in. There's a lot that Judge Price can do, and the most important thing is that place is a death trap and a health hazard. And anyone who wants to get onto a 30-day monthly lease without a $250 extra charge, Judge Price can do that for them. There is a lot that Judge Price can do, and we're asking her to do that. It's illegal, Mr. Hecker, to allow people to speak that you like longer than people that you don't like. It's illegal to fast track the legislation and pass something forward for advertising that the public has never seen and never had the proper opportunity to comment on. This is not okay. You're making up the rules as you go, and you don't think anything of it. Mr. Manfredi, your management is coming into question. You started out by hiring somebody who had problems in multiple other townships to do our zoning and code, and also gave her engineering, and also gave her, in other words, she had 3: public works, engineering, and code. Huge areas, all on one person's shoulders, who had problems and ended up in racketeering issues. Then you hired someone with 0 experience. When we complained, you ignored us. Then you put the experienced person in refuse. And literally unbelievable to watch this stuff. And now you're hiring a fireman and an emergency manager, not somebody with years and years of code experience. Please, Mr. Manfredi, start trying to manage, please. Where is Mr. Heil? Who's overseeing the plumbing that's going on now? Because we want pictures. There are people who are responsible for that plumbing behind the walls looking like it does. Tell him to get pictures. And Mr. Heil should also be responsible for the electrical that is faulty. And you've heard that it's faulty. I haven't heard that he's called out on anything yet. He's the building code official. That's his area. 1.5 property maintenance inspectors, you said, and a whole lot of properties. That's bad management, Mr. Manfredi. If you only have 1.5 and you need more to do the job, please.
Ms. Lehman, please conclude your comments. Your time has expired.
And why is Raymore Flanagan like that? Thank you.
Mr. Manfredi, do you wish to say something?
President Hecker, I'm going to give those comments about my management the attention they deserve. The only thing I'm going to say is I am very proud that Mr. Platts is our fire marshal. If John Rohr, who I respect immensely, recommended Mr. Platts, and Mr. McEnany recommended Mr. Platts, I'm very proud to make the selection of Mr. Platts, as well as Mr. McEnany, and I'm not going to even address the other comments.
Okay, thank you. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you. Oh, wait, hold on, Commissioner Vaughn.
I sit here, and I know I'm fairly new to the board, but, you know, I listen over and over to people like Adele say that no one answers her phone calls, and I specifically was on the phone with you for an hour and a half. I was on the phone with you for an hour and a half.
Ma'am, would you let her speak, please?
I was on the phone with you for an hour and a half on New Year's Eve. And I sit here and listen to you talk about us disrespectfully, and you say rude things about us, and you question Mr. Manfredi's. Listen, we let you speak, and I didn't comment at all. So I'm going to ask you to respect me enough to be quiet right now while I speak, because we let you talk every meeting, and you don't allow other people to do the same thing. You talk over people constantly. That's not what adults should do.
All
You
right.
should have enough respect for us.
Meeting is adjourned.